You're listening to Underground USA News.
Wednesday, August 20th, 2025. The Department of Homeland Security, under Secretary Kristi Noem, has canceled 49 grant projects, saving $8 million after a Middle East Forum report exposed $25 million in federal funds, allegedly awarded to organizations with ties to terrorist groups like Hamas and Iran's revolutionary Shi'a Islamism between 2013 and 2023. The report highlighted grants to entities such as the al-Hijrah Mosque in Virginia, the Council on American Islamic Relations, and mosques in Michigan and Texas, prompting DHS to implement stricter vetting for nonprofit security grants to prevent taxpayer dollars from supporting potential threats to national security. This action reflects a commitment to ensuring federal funds do not inadvertently empower extremist organizations, with DHS conducting an independent review to further safeguard public safety. Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard has revoked the security clearances of 37 current and former officials, citing their involvement in a controversial Obama-era intelligence report that she claims politicized and manipulated information to falsely allege Russian interference in the 2016 election, fueling the so-called Russiagate narrative. Gabbard asserts that these actions, including those tied to a 2016 assessment ordered by President Obama, undermined public trust and constituted an abuse of power, with the memo naming figures like a former aide to Obama's DNI James Clapper. Critics argue this move is a step toward accountability for what they see as a politically motivated effort to discredit President Trump, though some question the timing and potential politicization of Gabbard's decision. The Justice Department is reportedly reviewing related documents for possible criminal implications, reflecting ongoing tensions over the handling of intelligence during the 2016 election. U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia, Gina Pirro, has initiated a Department of Justice investigation into whether Washington, D.C. police officials manipulated crime statistics to present a falsely optimistic picture of public safety, a move that aligns with the Trump administration's push to address perceived law enforcement failures in the nation's capital. The probe, prompted by allegations against a suspended Metropolitan Police Department commander, Michael Pulliam, seeks to uncover whether city officials deliberately skewed data to downplay crime rates, which have reportedly dropped 35% since 2024, according to local police figures, though Pirro and others question their accuracy. President Trump has publicly supported the investigation, emphasizing the need for transparency and accountability to ensure D.C. becomes a safer city. Critics argue this could be a politically motivated effort, but supporters see it as a necessary step to restore trust in law enforcement reporting and address persistent crime concerns. In a tense immigration enforcement operation in San Bernardino County, California, a U.S. Customs and Border Protection agent fired 3 shots at a moving vehicle after the driver, a 43-year-old Mexican man without legal status, refused to comply with orders to lower his window and allegedly struck 2 agents while fleeing. The Department of Homeland Security claims the agent acted in self-defense, though video evidence from the driver's family, who dispute the official account, shows agents smashing the vehicle's windows and does not clearly depict the agents being struck. The incident, occurring just before 9 a.m. on Saturday, has reignited criticism of California's sanctuary policies, which prevented local police from detaining the driver due to state laws limiting cooperation with federal immigration authorities. The Department of Homeland Security condemned the local response as reckless, highlighting ongoing tensions between federal enforcement and California's protective stance toward immigrants. Federal law enforcement officers arrested several Antifa militants in Portland, Oregon on August 18, 2025, following a coordinated attack on a U.S. immigration and customs enforcement facility. The black-clad rioters, mobilized through social media calls for mass mobilization in response to an illegal migrant's detention, hurled projectiles, and engaged in aggressive actions, prompting federal officers to respond decisively with arrests. This incident, part of an ongoing Antifa occupation since early June, underscores escalating tensions as rioters have repeatedly targeted ICE infrastructure, with over 20 individuals already facing federal charges for related violent acts, including assaults and arson. Critics argue that Portland's sanctuary city policies and judicial leniency have emboldened such lawlessness, leaving federal authorities to address the unrest. California Republican state lawmakers have filed a lawsuit in the state Supreme Court to block Governor Gavin Newsom and Democrat legislators from advancing a controversial redistricting plan aimed at flipping 5 Republican-held congressional seats. The GOP argues that the Democrat-led effort, which seeks to counter a similar Republican redistricting push in Texas, violates California's constitution by bypassing the state's independent redistricting commission and ignoring mandatory 30-day public review periods. Critics, including Assemblywoman Kate Sanchez, emphasize that Californians voted in 2008 to remove partisan influence from redistricting, and this rushed proposal undermines that mandate. The lawsuit, filed on August 19, 2025, highlights concerns over transparency and fairness, accusing Democrats of rushing the process to hold a special election in November to redraw maps for the 2026 midterms. Internal Justice Department emails reveal that senior officials warned the Biden administration about the legal risks of using an autopen for thousands of last-minute pardons, including clemency for violent offenders, contradicting claims that these were limited to nonviolent crimes. The controversy centers on whether former President Biden, aged 82, was fully aware of the decisions, raising questions about transparency and accountability in the White House. Critics argue the autopen's use, approved by Chief of Staff Jeff Zients, may undermine the constitutional integrity of the pardon process, with some calling for the Trump administration to challenge the validity of these actions. The issue highlights broader concerns about bureaucratic overreach during Biden's final days in office. President Trump is calling for the immediate resignation of Federal Reserve Board Governor Lisa Cook, following allegations of mortgage fraud leveled by Federal Housing Finance Agency Director Bill Polk. The accusations, which remain unconfirmed, claim Cook misrepresented primary residences on mortgage applications for properties in Michigan and Georgia in 2021, prompting Polk to refer the matter to the Department of Justice for investigation. This move aligns with Trump's broader push to reshape the central bank and pressure it to lower interest rates, a goal complicated by the Fed's commitment to independence and concerns over economic stability. Critics argue this tactic reflects a pattern of targeting political opponents with legal scrutiny, while supporters maintain it underscores accountability for alleged misconduct. A federal appellate court ruled on August 19, 2025, that New Mexico's 7-day waiting period for firearm purchases likely violates citizens' constitutional protections, halting the law pending further legal review. The decision, supported by the National Rifle Association and the Mountain States Legal Foundation, found that the waiting period lacks historical grounding and burdens the right to keep and bear arms, as articulated by Judge Timothy Timkovich in the 2-1 ruling. This marks a critical pushback against restrictive gun control measures, reinforcing the principle that law-abiding citizens should not face undue delays in exercising their constitutional freedoms. The ruling underscores ongoing tensions between state-level gun regulations and federal protections, with implications for similar laws nationwide. Indiana's Republican congressional delegation has united in support of a mid-decade redistricting effort pushed by the White House to bolster GOP representation ahead of the 2026 midterms. Despite significant pushback from state Republican lawmakers who see it as setting a dangerous precedent, Vice President J.D. Vance recently visited Indiana to urge Governor Mike Braun and legislative leaders to redraw congressional maps, aiming to flip one or two of the state's 2 Democrat-held seats. While the delegation, including Representatives Marlin Stutzman, Victoria Spartz, and others, argues this counters Democrat gerrymandering in states like California, state legislators like Jim Lucas remain firmly opposed, citing concerns over fairness and the integrity of Indiana's 2021 maps. Governor Braun remains non-committal, emphasizing the need for consensus, as the state GOP faces pressure from both national figures and local constituents wary of altering electoral boundaries mid-cycle. Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker's recent signing of House Bill 460, which extends state financial aid to illegal immigrants for college tuition, has ignited fierce criticism as the state grapples with a $3.2 billion deficit and is projected to spend $2.5 billion on illegal immigrant-related costs this year. Critics, including Illinois House Republicans and U.S. Representative Mary Miller, argue that prioritizing non-citizens over tax-paying residents is a misuse of funds, especially when many Illinois families struggle with rising costs and limited access to higher education. The legislation, framed by Democrats as promoting equitable eligibility, is seen by detractors as an affront to hardworking citizens, exacerbating the state's financial strain while rewarding illegal immigration. This move follows a pattern of controversial policies, including Pritzker's support for health care benefits and driver's licenses for illegal immigrants, further fueling debate over fiscal responsibility and border security. The American Academy of Pediatrics has diverged from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention for the first time in 30 years, issuing new COVID-19 vaccine recommendations that prioritize shots for children ages 6 months to 2 years and those with chronic conditions, while leaving vaccinations for healthy older children to parental discretion. This move, announced on August 19, 2025, reflects the AAP's supposed commitment to protecting vulnerable young patients amid concerns over conflicting government guidance under the new Trump administration. Critics, including the Department of Health and Human Services, argue the AAP's stance may confuse the public and prioritize commercial interests, as vaccine manufacturers have donated heavily to the AAP's initiatives. The decision underscores a growing tension between federal health policy and pediatric medical groups, raising questions about how best to safeguard children's health in a politically charged climate. Tatiana Martinez, a Colombian TikTok influencer with over 30,000 followers, was arrested by ICE agents in Los Angeles on August 15, 2025, during a live stream, facing charges related to a prior DUI conviction and allegations of doxing federal agents. Known for sharing locations of ICE operations to incite protests, Martinez was forcibly removed from her Tesla, resisted arrest, and was later hospitalized before being detained pending deportation proceedings. The incident, which included an activist towing a government vehicle, underscores the escalating tensions surrounding immigration enforcement under the Trump administration's crackdown, highlighting the risks of publicizing sensitive law enforcement activities. In a move to offset the recent $1.1 billion federal funding cut to the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, major philanthropic organizations, including the Knight, MacArthur, and Ford Foundations, have pledged nearly $37 million to sustain PBS and NPR stations, particularly smaller ones facing financial strain. While this emergency funding aims to preserve public media's role in delivering news and educational content, critics argue it underscores the network's reliance on elite donors with potential agendas, raising questions about their independence and whether taxpayer dollars should ever have been involved in funding media with perceived partisan leanings. The Public Media Bridge Fund, as it's called, seeks to raise $100 million over 2 years to stabilize these outlets, but some see this as a temporary fix for a system long overdue for privatization. Elon Musk, the billionaire entrepreneur and former Trump ally, has reportedly shelved plans to launch his America Party and is instead considering supporting Vice President J.D. Vance as a potential successor to Donald Trump in the 2028 presidential election. Initially announced in July 2025, following a public feud with Trump over a massive spending bill, the America Party aimed to challenge the Republican-Democrat uniparty system. However, Musk's decision to step back stems from a desire to maintain ties with influential Republicans, particularly Vance, and avoid splitting the GOP vote ahead of the 2026 midterms. Sources indicate Musk, who spent nearly $300 million backing Trump and GOP candidates in 2024, is redirecting his focus to his business ventures like Tesla and SpaceX, while eyeing a quieter but significant role in supporting Vance's potential 2028 campaign. This strategic pivot reflects Musk's intent to preserve political influence within the Republican fold without fracturing its base. Vice President J.D. Vance played a pivotal role in persuading the United Kingdom to abandon its demand for Apple to provide backdoor access to encrypted user data, a move that would have compromised the privacy of American citizens. Leveraging his technology background and commitment to individual liberties, Vance directly negotiated with British officials to secure a deal that preserves U.S. sovereignty and protects constitutional rights while maintaining cooperative data-sharing agreements. The agreement, announced by Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard, ensures that Apple's end-to-end encryption remains intact, safeguarding users from potential overreach by foreign governments. This diplomatic success underscores the Trump administration's dedication to defending digital privacy against global pressures. Despite the European Union's stated goal of phasing out Russian energy imports by 2027, the bloc imported €4.48 billion worth of Russian liquefied natural gas in the first half of 2025, a significant increase from €3.47 billion in the same period of 2024. This rise, driven by imports primarily through Spain, France, and Belgium, highlights the EU's ongoing dependency on Russian energy, even as it diversifies with €13.7 billion in LNG from the United States. Critics argue this continued trade undermines efforts to weaken Russia's economic leverage, particularly given the absence of sanctions on Russian gas, unlike oil and coal, raising questions about the EU's energy security strategy and its commitment to supporting Ukraine against Russian aggression. In a sobering escalation of the Ukraine conflict, NATO warplanes were scrambled for the second consecutive day as Russia launched intense drone and missile strikes on Ukraine's Izmail port and oil facilities in the Odessa region, less than a mile from Romania's border, a NATO member state. The proximity of the attacks to NATO territory has raised concerns about potential spillover, casting doubt on Russian President Vladimir Putin's sincerity in pursuing peace, despite U.S. efforts to broker talks between him and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. The Romanian Air Force deployed 2 German Typhoon jets to monitor the situation, underscoring NATO's vigilance in defending its eastern flank amid fears of broader conflict. While the alliance's response reflects a commitment to collective defense, the ongoing Russian aggression highlights the fragility of diplomatic efforts to resolve the war. French President Emmanuel Macron has signaled a firm stance against Russia, warning that tougher sanctions will be imposed if negotiations over the ongoing conflict in Ukraine fail to yield progress. Speaking amid heightened tensions, Macron emphasized the need for diplomatic solutions, but underscored that France and its allies are prepared to escalate economic and political measures to pressure Moscow into compliance. This development highlights the growing resolve among Western leaders to counter Russian aggression, while maintaining a cautious approach to avoid further escalation. The announcement comes as global attention remains fixed on the delicate balance of power in Eastern Europe, with the international community urging a peaceful resolution. In a significant milestone for global energy, nuclear power generation has hit an all-time high, driven largely by surging demand and development in Asia. The World Nuclear Association reports that nuclear energy output reached unprecedented levels in 2024, with Asia's rapidly expanding economies, particularly China and India, spearheading the growth through new reactor constructions and operational efficiencies. While Western nations maintain steady nuclear output, Asia's aggressive push for reliable, low-carbon energy underscores nuclear's critical role in meeting rising electricity demands and combating climate change. This resurgence highlights the pragmatic embrace of nuclear power as a stable, high-output energy source, despite lingering public skepticism in some regions. A Vienna regional court's decision to uphold a €320,000 arbitration award based on Islamic Sharia law has ignited debate in Austria, with critics warning it could pave the way for parallel legal systems that undermine the nation's secular legal framework. The ruling, stemming from a private contract between 2 men who agreed to resolve disputes under Sharia principles, was deemed valid as it did not violate Austria's fundamental legal values, despite the plaintiff's objections that Sharia is ambiguous and incompatible with Austrian law. The Freedom Party of Austria and the Turkish cultural community have voiced strong opposition, citing risks of legitimizing political Islam, and referencing a 2003 European Court of Human Rights decision, declaring Sharia incompatible with democratic principles. While the court emphasized the ruling applies only to consensual civil arbitration such as property disputes, the decision has raised alarms about the broader implications for cultural integration and the rule of law in Austria.
You're listening to Underground USA News.